We are used to prayer moving in one direction. When we hurt, we ask God to feel for us, and He does. The book of Hebrews assures us our high priest sympathizes with our weaknesses. We expect God to act as the comforter. But there is a grace we have almost entirely neglected. It is the concept of a human heart that feels with God. We rarely ask what it would mean to have empathy for the divine, to stand beside the comforter in what He has borne. To understand this inversion in empathy, we have to look through the window of an old, battered man sitting on an ash heap. Job had everything, and he lost it all. If we want to understand the hidden heart of the Creator, we must first examine this famous historical victim of inexplicable human suffering. The scale of Job's physical and social collapse was absolute. He lost his property, his children, his health, his standing, and the respect of his peers. He had done nothing to deserve it. He was innocent, yet afflicted in his own body. The cruelest part of his ordeal came from the people who arrived to comfort him. They stayed to prosecute him. His friends applied a strict, straight-line logic. Suffering proves guilt. Job is on the ash heap, they reasoned, therefore Job earned it. Modern humanity applies that exact same flawed logic to God when confronted with a broken world. We reason the same way, only aimed upward. The world is an ash heap, therefore its maker is at fault. We fill in the blanks. It is God's fault my child died. It is God's fault the innocent are crushed. Humanity concludes that God is either cruel, careless, or asleep. Even worse, the theological defense often claims He actively wills innocent suffering for a grand, secret plan. The biblical text reveals a shocking response to this. When God finally speaks, He does not turn on the angry, protesting sufferer. He turns on the defenders. He tells the men who claimed He willed the tragedy that they misrepresented Him. God takes the side of the accused against His own would-be defenders. God's verdict suggests we have misidentified the characters in this story. To understand why He takes the side of the sufferer, we have to hold Job's losses up as a mirror to his own. This visual ledger maps Job's earthly losses directly onto God's cosmic losses. Job lost his family. God lost his children to spiritual death, alienated from His house. Expanding downward, Job lost his spouse's loyalty. God lost the devotion of humanity to other idols. Adding the third row, Job lost his estate. God saw humanity surrender earthly authority to a usurper. Finally, God lost His reputation. The Creator became the most accused and misunderstood being in the universe. By holding up the mirror of Job, we see a God who has endured a magnitude of betrayal, theft, and slander that dwarfs human comprehension. Job was always a rumor of this great sufferer, the shadow falling from God's own substance. This raises an immediate logical paradox. How can an all-powerful, omnipotent being actually lose control of His own creation? God is never overpowered. This diagram illustrates the principle of self-binding. God's massive sphere of influence voluntarily restricts its boundaries to create an entirely autonomous zone, giving humanity genuine free will. When humanity surrendered its authority to the enemy, God honored the transaction rather than breaking His own rules. The devil claimed the world, and the Lord did not argue. He held the boundary firm. These devastating losses reveal a commitment to human freedom that would eventually cost the Creator His own life. He chose to buy the world back in blood rather than reclaiming it by force. Still, humanity acts as a relentless prosecutor. We put God on trial and demand He answer for the atrocities, the grief, and the brokenness of the world. God's response to this trial defies expectation. He doesn't clear His name in a courtroom. He doesn't argue His innocence from the judge's bench. He physically steps down into the defendant's dock. To the charge that He can only compel, never be loved, He answered by refusing to compel. He answered by being nailed to rough-hewn wooden beams, rather than by seizing control. The world fills in the blank. It is God's fault that there is a cross. Heaven fills in the same blank. Yes, and I climbed onto it. God definitively answered the charge of divine cruelty by absorbing the ultimate cruelty Himself. To the accusation that it is His fault the innocent suffer, He became the innocent who suffers. There is a line in Psalm 69 that reveals a historical anomaly. Of the suffering one it is written, "I looked for sympathy, but there was none, and for comforters, but I found none." He looked for comforters. He found none. Down the long centuries, humanity has mostly stood with the accusers, or defended him with cold theology. We have left him utterly alone in his grief. Here is the invitation. When you are confronted with tragedy, by a hard theology, or by your own bitter hour, actively refuse to join the prosecution against God. Be the comforter he looked for. To speak rightly of God, as Job did, is not to defend him with explanations that wound him. It is to identify with his heartbreak over a ruined world. When you read of his losses, grieve them with him. Following the greater Job means moving beyond a simple submission to power. It is the act of offering empathy to the one who has been looking for comforters for a very long time.